Welcome everybody to today's webinar with My Plan Manager, UiPath and Cloudwerx. I'm Toby and today we're going to be talking about automation and optimizing, among other systems, government portals. Joining us today on the webinar is Jane Kittle, Chief Executive Officer of My Plan Manager, Richard Hilliard, Chief Technology Officer of My Plan Manager, Michael Tatti, Technology Consultant at UiPath, and me, Toby, Chief Executive Officer at Cloudwerx. Let's get started.
Firstly, just going to go through with our guests and just a little bit of a snapshot of your world at the moment. And Jane, if we can start with you, just on some of the stuff and the awesome stuff that's going on that you're doing at My Plan Manager. It'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. And hi, everyone. So for me, I joined My Plan Manager in January 2020. I'd had over 25 years in the banking and finance world and had really reached a point in my career that I was looking to do something different and wanted to be part of really very much a growth sector, but also contribute to the community. And so I was looking for a role that was going to enable me to give back to the community. I'd had 6 years as chair and board member of Catherine House in South Australia, which is a not-for-profit that supports homeless women. And, I guess that really, sort of put the fire in my belly in terms of wanting to move into a role, on a, sort of day-to-day basis that would give me the same satisfaction and, sort of motivation and feeling that I was actually contributing to something that, was about a higher purpose. And so that was My Plan Manager for me. So for those of you who maybe don't know what My Plan Manager does, we are a registered provider as part of the National Disability Insurance Scheme and as part of that ecosystem. And we work with clients to provide plan management and capacity building services. And really that's very important for people who are trying to navigate through what is a very complex NDIS ecosystem. So, that's been fantastic. When I first joined, the company had been going through really, really rapid growth. And, part of the reason that I was brought in was very much to professionalise the company and to ensure that we had really solid foundations to continue to grow and scale. So this, sort of last 2 years has been really focused on getting those foundations in place. We've had significant investment and innovation throughout the company. Obviously, as part of that, we've partnered with companies like Cloudwerx, which has enabled us to really streamline and transform our processes, and certainly the use of technology and innovation to drive not only efficiencies, but more importantly, better client experiences. So that's, I guess, a little bit about where we've been, and I'm sure we'll talk more about some of those technologies and innovation throughout the webinar. Thanks, Toby.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, Rich, I think it's almost a year, is it, at My Plan Manager?
I think, yeah, it's hard to believe. It's now 2 weeks away, I think, from my 1 year anniversary. So it's flown by. Fantastic.
Tell us about your role. How's this similar or different to stuff you've done in the past? And you can share a little bit more.
So I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at My Plan Manager. And as you mentioned, I'm just nearly a year in the role now. And really, I just echo sort of Jane's comments about how exciting it is to be in a company that not only is going through such rapid growth and in my role is really keen to utilise, AI, machine learning and, an RPA, but, has got such great values at its core in terms of innovation and, kindness and being genuine and inclusive. So as a role, it's, probably the most exciting and one of the most interesting I've ever had. I spent most of my career, like Jane, in financial services. So to come to My Plan Manager has been, something very different. But in many ways, it's sort of wrestling with similar challenges in terms of customer experience, operational efficiencies, risk and security that most CIOs do. So I guess one of the differences that, that was start when I arrived at My Plan Manager was, in discussing with Jane is a couple of things that really need to be looked at. I guess like taking the technology team and improving its relationship with the business. So making sure we were really working hand in hand, and the things that my team were working on were absolutely aligned with the top priorities of the strategy and goals of the business. And we did sort of, the business, which is sort of grown really from sort of a few people around a kitchen table, as we talk about. You can imagine the systems grew up sort of fairly organically. So there were aspects of the architecture which were, creaking at the seams and sort of reaching at the end of their useful life. So there was a real need for us to reset that. And, Jane talks about actually strengthening the organisation and helping it grow up from a technology perspective. That's been really critical as well to allow us to continue that growth, and how we've come upon, tools like UiPath to help us get there.
Fantastic. Now, Michael, this webinar finds you in Canberra, if I'm right.
Yep, that's correct.
That's right. And like specialising around the healthcare sector, tell us a little bit about your world, day in the life of Michael at UiPath.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with my current role. So working with UiPath, I'm the automation technical consultant here in Canberra. So I support all of our partners and our customers in really understanding what is the art of the possible with the UiPath technology platform, and how does that help enable businesses to achieve the outcomes that they're seeking. And I like to sort of position what is the UiPath platform and what is the value that it brings. Well, it's not a point solution that solves any one particular problem like we would buy maybe an individual piece of finance or CRM software. It's really a automation capability that augments your workforce and can assist us in emulating the work that we don't really want to do. So, the mundane and the repetitive, and therefore freeing us up to do the value add work that is really the stuff that we like to come in and do on Monday, and not the weekly reporting that we have to do every now and then. So that's really what I'm here to do, is to try and paint that vision and help customers understand the value that it can bring. And my background in healthcare in particular, and I have come across from customer side a year ago, where I spent 10 years with a company called Aspen Medical in a range of HR and operational sort of service delivery, subsequently moving into IT service delivery management and project management, which is when I stumbled across RPA for the first time, implementing a pilot, getting my hands dirty on some of the development tools myself. And that's really was my first experience in understanding that it truly is a technology that can support really any line of business that we have within our organizations, and can truly speed up what it is we're trying to do. So in my past life, what that meant for me was, how can I leverage automation to provide better customer outcomes through the services that we were providing, and that's what we did, and I fell in love with it since then. So pleasure to be here on the webinar and support any questions and assist as we go.
I think we'll hear more from you, Mike, on a broader industry perspective than from the product side of things. But Jane, RPA and robots, it wasn't something new. Like you've experienced, you've come from banking sector, right, which is pretty prolific, kind of early adopters of RPA. But what's when we started talking about it, what was your take on it? And this time around compared to before.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. For me, as I said, when I came in, it was really about setting those foundations in place. And so one of the first things, I think it was only, sort of 7 or 8 weeks in, that we started to first talk. And it was really important for us to, basically, sort of go back and map processes and get a really clear view of what that client journey and experience looked like, at that point in time. So we're talking sort of, I guess April, May 2020. And from there, it started to become more obvious about ways that we could automate and drive, a better client experience and efficiency, as I said. So, when we started talking about the opportunity for machine learning, for use of artificial intelligence and, sort of then going on to robotics, I was really excited about the prospects of what that could offer for us. And it was really about enabling us to free up capacity in our organisation so that our staff could actually focus on the proactive work that everyone wants to do. And that's been the experience that we've had over this last, 18 months or so, is that it's created a lot more capacity in our business. And I think it's been important that we went through that process of mapping processes up front and really understanding, at a detailed level, all the various steps that were involved in the client journey for, all the different aspects of interactions, because it enabled us to then narrow in on where we would get the most benefit and the most benefit from the client's experience. But obviously, there's also great flow-on benefits for our people and our employees in that it takes them away from, sort of some of the mundane, more repetitive activities that, aren't a good use of their time and skills to enable them to actually add a lot more value to clients and the experience that clients have with us. Yeah, and fantastic. Richard, would I be right in saying you might have been a bit of a skeptic on RPA in previous lives?
Yeah, a little. I had a healthy cynicism, I think, like to begin with, and it was something that was very new to me. And I think if I cast my mind back to previous roles, we were solving problems with API integration and workflow and sort of more traditional tools that had been around for a number of years. So there was a little bit about me was, well, is this a solution that's looking for a problem? But when I came into My Plan Manager, and saw some of these processes that Jane outlines, where you're navigating across multiple different systems, and there's no integration between any of them, and you're having to sort of move data around and sort of capture that. It really started to sort of pique my interest a little bit more, and I started to see the opportunity. So we embarked on the experiment.
And Michael, while you take that sip of that drink, I'm going to ask a question right at the wrong time. So with what you're seeing with organizations out there too, like that, how do you see the sentiment on this? What is this, for one, robots and whatever, but how's this different to any, other tech? Like, is that a common thread? You see folks with that little bit of like, what's different kind of thing, but then actually there's an aha moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's really two sides of this, and one is the maybe the Richard side of the spectrum, those coming with a stronger IT background and understanding, for example, what the API automation space looks like, through to the other end of the spectrum, which is in fact the business users that have the challenge, have the problem, and the opportunity in whatever it is they're doing to address. And there's different levels of, I suppose, coming into both ends of those spectrums, I suppose, preconceived understandings of what technology can do for us in a business. And if I start with the IT side, what a common thing we see is that RPA can sometimes be seen as, is it just another simple widget that's going to add to my technology stack and increase my overall total cost of ownership, and runs the risk of being yet another tool that we may or may not use. And what we see is there's a journey from considering RPA to be a point solution or a band-aid solution to specific problems, to actually a different way of augmenting technology into the business to enable, which is one of IT's core functions, to enable what it is that the business needs to do to be successful, and actually empowering the tools and the ownership of those tools more directly to the business users, rather than it be some black box software solutions that's managed by IT teams, and then it's just there for the configuration or when something fails, and that's it. So it's a much more collaborative approach between IT and business. I see is one of the common journeys that IT will generally go on, and it's once that journey is understood, that I think that bridges a lot of or opens up the minds to really what is the potential of the RPA technology here when you do truly augment it with your business side. And similarly for the when businesses first come in at RPA, it can be a little bit unknown. So there's a software robot. It already sounds confusing, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. Automation, I'm not a technical person, so probably not for us, right? Maybe it's an IT function. But, with the business sides of the discussion, we also find that with that ability to augment the technology with business to empower you to do even day-to-day things through to large transformational business changes. There comes a level of ownership and empowerment with that I think is exciting to the business to say, well, I'm not just interfacing with a static system that solves a single problem. I've actually got a lot of ownership of the growth and direction of this product and what it can do for me. And I think it's exciting to see on both sides of the fence what starts with we're not really sure where it fits, and that evolves over time to this can really do quite a broad scope of things and bring business and IT together to jointly, I guess, achieve the mission of what each of our organizations are trying to achieve. So I think that's that journey that's absolutely exciting for me to see.
Yeah. So if we shift gears a little bit and sort of towards the actual, the project that we're going to talk about, Jane, like when because I know you were involved as well very heavily in the selection of all of the things, the candidates for automation and where do we start and all that sort of stuff. It was a fairly sort of combination of the blueprinting that we do early days that gave us that view of the whole organization and all that sort of stuff. But did that help you guys work out where's the best bang for buck for kicking off this journey?
Yeah, absolutely, Toby. There's no doubt that having invested the time up front, and I guess when I came into my plan manager, I wanted to make sure that we did this right and that we didn't have to go back and, sort of have 2 or 3, goes at really understanding the processes and therefore, sort of that base level that we were starting at, to then think about, sort of what's the client experience and client journey that we want to deliver. Mm-hmm. And the blueprinting process really helped us to map that out and involved a number of people from right across our business because, we needed to have obviously SMEs involved. So, our people that were actually dealing with this every day and people who understood what would make a difference for clients as well. So that upfront investment in the blueprint process was a really important foundation. And then it was the combination of, the business working with the technology team in partnership, as well as with UiPath, with Cloudwerx, to really identify, what were the sort of top, maybe 5 or 6 opportunities, and for us then to, test some of those to finally narrow it down to, what was the first one that we were going to, really pursue and work on. So, I guess that was the journey that we went on, and that happened over, a number of weeks, really. And then there was the process of, sort of working on the actual establishment of the robotics and, sort of lots of testing and learning along the way. And I'm sure Richard will, talk about some of that journey as well. But I think, for me, ensuring that we understood the detail of our processes and enabled us to really pinpoint where we would get the biggest return and the most important impact, positively for our clients' experience.
Thanks, Jane. I know moving on, Richard, as far as this project, and let's talk about the one that was selected to be to start with the service bookings using Proto and that sort of stuff. How did that differ to other projects that you've been across, and how could you see the most important out of the ones to choose where to start?
So I mean, I think when we went through that process, there was a clear standout, in terms of impact across the business. Now, within plan management, in order to provide plan management services to clients, you need to set up a whole host of bits of information within our internal systems regarding the client's plan and their budgets. And that happens when a new client is onboarded, but it also happens whenever a plan is extended. And typically we see plans sort of re-established on an annual basis. So that process happens, it needs to be sort of re-established again and again and repeatedly. Now, originally that was taking team members somewhere in the region of 45 minutes to do that process from end to end. And we process hundreds of those, sort of within any given week. So there was a clear standout there that it was something we could focus on, and it was also characterised by a lot of logging onto government portals, downloading documents, cutting and pasting information, and translating it into a number of internal platforms. So that was the sort of background about how we landed on that being the one we started with. And I guess we approached it sort of as we would normally, and I think very quickly we weren't. It was a bit different to a standard sort of software development project, and it really lent itself to more sort of experimentation, test and learn, and trying things, which was a bit of a leap of faith for us, really. But by trying to apply, I guess, traditional, even agile methodologies to it, we really had to go into much more of an experimentation mode, because as we sort of dove into the detail, we were finding little edge cases that we hadn't thought about, all of which needed to be sort of tailored for. So I mean, critical to that, we seconded a dedicated sort of business subject matter expert to the project out of her day role, who was highly familiar with the process, and could also actually influence across the business as well. And she was really instrumental in sort of helping us work through that. And then working closely with the Cloudwerx team and some of my team internally as well, we really just sort of took that sort of test and learn approach. We also had to, take the leap and sort of plunge into production very early. And in doing that, we realised there was a very high risk. So we started literally with one user in production using it. And as we gained confidence, sort of down into 2 users and then to 3 and 4 over a period of time, as we got, built confidence not only in ourselves from a technology perspective, but within the business as well, because, quite often, as Michael said up front, our robots, what's that all about? Is it coming to take my job? That kind of thing. You counter some of the cultural sort of issues and, concerns about introducing these technologies into the mainstream.
Yeah, because we had some curly conversations in there. It wasn't a straight road, right, with all of this sort of stuff, and we were using lots of different systems, and I think it's testament to you guys in NPM is that leap of faith, going, okay, well, it's we want to have a crack. We come from the Salesforce ecosystem originally, and this is kind of moving using multiple systems as well. So that was another sort of interesting flavour to it all. But would you say the juice was worth the squeeze?
Yeah, I think, and Jane, chip in what you think. I mean, it took longer than we thought it would. It cost more than we thought it would. However, the headline is that 45-minute process is down to 4 or 5 minutes now. There's still it's not fully automated. There's still large component that component. There's still large components that the team member needs to complete internally, but that really speaks for itself when you sort of start doing the maths around volume and so on. And from a cultural perspective and impact of a technology project in the business, I've done a lot, and quite often you get a bumpy landing. It's probably one of the most appreciated projects I've ever worked on by staff. And to dispel that myth of the robots are coming to take my job, and they can really see it as a virtual assistant that is a productivity tool which allows them to focus on the value add activities, dealing directly with clients rather than that repetitive, mundane administration, has just been a game changer for us.
Yeah, I think Jane, what you see is the biggest impact with all of this sort of stuff, right? Obviously, there's the 10,000 hours over a year and all of that sort of stuff, which is on paper fantastic. But for you, how did you judge, the impact of this project?
It's definitely been the response of staff members, frankly. And whilst we didn't plan it necessarily in this way, I won't claim that we did. The approach that Richard outlined in terms of implementation was a really good change management approach for the first introduction of robotics into the organisation. because very early on we got to the point where staff members, who were testing and using it, when I say testing, using it in production, wanted to keep it, so they wanted to make sure that we weren't going to turn that off and take it away from them because it was still in project mode, and so for me, building that desire and that want of staff members in the business, and that very quick, that message very quickly went across, the broader group of staff involved in these processes, was just brilliant. And, it was all that we could have hoped for and imagined. And as Richard said, very quickly dispelled any concerns about the use of robotics and, what people may have read and heard in other organisations about what it meant for, jobs and obviously implications around job reduction. For us, that's not an issue. We are continuing to grow rapidly, and, we're very easily able to, show staff how the use of robotics is going to enable them to be much more effective in their roles. And as Richard said, free them up to, to do other things. I will say it's been a journey that we've been on, and, we've had to hold the course because, there were some conversations about, are we actually really sure this is going to do what we thought it was going to do? Because, there were some tough times along the way. But, we did hold the course, and obviously we're very pleased that we did. It's been a very positive experience. You easily forget, some of those tougher times that you work through. And, for us, it's very much about what are the other candidates that we could look at as we move forward. And, we'll do that in a really considered way because, once again, it's about being disciplined on, where it's going to make the most difference to the client experience and the employee experience, and where we think the biggest benefit and value can be derived.
And Michael, I guess this would be a similar theme, right? Which you see in organisations where there's a bunch of candidates for automation, and you start with one, and sometimes it's a bit hard to get through that one and then on to the next and see that return. Any sort of thoughts around how folks should approach that? Because that momentum is really important to, as you say, you're opening up a capability, right? It's not just like connecting, inputting another, a CRM or ERP. It's a certain workforce extension.
Yeah, absolutely. And very glad you threw to me, Toby, because I, on the back of Jane's comments, I do have a quick anecdotal story I'll come back to as well, which is one of my favorite automations that I implemented that had a powerful human impact more than a financial or an hours saved impact. So I'll come back to that one in a second. But in terms of where do you start? So it's a fantastic question, and I think and this is also the power of the platform is that you can start big bang and go for full transformation, or you can start very small and agile and prove out the capability. And generally, what we'll say is, what makes a good automation candidate when we're starting out on that journey? Anything that has high volumes, whether it's many people doing the same job or one person doing the same job many times, anything that's got high, very iterative, if it's rules based, if it's dealing with structured data, any system, any digital system today, then put all of those things together and you've got a good candidate for the effort to automate that process versus the elimination of the hours then spent on that forecast over the next 12 months. That's where we start to see some good bang for buck with the platform. And generally what we would suggest is either if we have a known business area that has a challenge, maybe we have some resource constraints in the finance team, maybe we're looking to do operational improvement more broadly within HR or really any area of the business, put a ring around that, go and do some process analysis and try and find, map out that process and say, well, where are the high volume, repetitive and rule-based activities? And then what we would say is, which of those is the low-hanging fruit? So which ones look like they're simple enough in terms of the rules that the build wouldn't be that complicated, not many exceptions and things like that, but that are going to save the most amount of hours or have the biggest impact to the business, whatever that means for each of our respective businesses. And that's where we start. And then we find that they're lower risk automations if they're simpler automations, plus the value is there. And then as we as we grow and expand, we can start to take on more and more complex automations, right through to we have a US customer, I think Cleveland Clinic reduced the waiting time in a COVID drive-through by 40 seconds per person, which times a lot of tests is a lot of throughput per day. And that's an example of a RPA application in a more complex physical environment with iPads connecting to servers and things like that you wouldn't immediately think about RPA has a place, but it absolutely can. So that's the spectrum that we, one day we can get to, but we absolutely can start. We can start small.
Yeah.
And I'll steal one more minute of airtime and have a very quick anecdotal story. So the second automation I ever built, similar to Jane's story, we were doing some pilot testing. Wasn't yet in quote unquote production. We'd given it to a single individual whose role was 50% really data entry. So taking data out of a spreadsheet, sanity checking it against the system, updating the spreadsheet, and then passing it back out to some internal customers. That was about half of her job. And needless to say, wasn't the exciting half of her job. So within about 2 weeks, we had built her an automation that she could run on her computer. She'd get to work. She'd started. It would run in the background. It would take about 2 hours to run while she did other work, and it output exactly what would take her on average half a day to do. And the impact of that was more than 0.5 of an FTE capacity in our business saved. The impact was, the direct feedback that I got from her manager, which was, we had somebody in the team who felt like they were on the side doing the low level work. Now they come to work with a renewed energy because they've been able to upskill into new opportunities. They're genuinely feeling like they're part of the broader team, and they're adding more value and not just doing simple data entry. So to me, that was one of the most powerful stories of the robots aren't here to take our jobs, as Richard says. They're absolutely here to sort of empower us to do more value add activities. And to me, that's really that's some of the power that the platform can bring over simply just reducing hours. So
yeah, no, good stuff. Jane or Richard, I'm not sure who wants to take this question, but about like the systems that RPA is involved in, because we're obviously the title of this webinar is about government portals, but that's like essentially just one of many systems that you guys, this project was touching. Like the view on that is it's like any system, right? And whether you use APIs and integration or robots and all that sort of stuff, it's for our understanding it depends on your ecosystem, right? But you guys work closely with the NDIA, and this system is one of many others that we've interacted with. Any thoughts for the the audience there on just how to navigate other portals that may not have the connectivity that can just connect as it were, like with an API. Your relationship there with the NDIA is very tight, and we have them quite along for the ride with all of this, right?
Yeah. I can't speak on behalf of other government areas, but the NDIA are taking their digital transformation very seriously, and they've established a community of interests which ourselves and other providers, plan managers, and even clients participate in, and they are well and truly pushing down the API journey there. So there are ways which you can work with them, and we work very close with them. And you're right, it's not just about government portals. There's a whole ecosystem internally which we need to deal with as well. But in that, we're pretty open book with NDIA what we're doing, and we do make sure that whatever policies and procedures and things we need to comply with in place, we actually follow through with.
Yeah. It's like, and with any of this sort of stuff, whether, there's stakeholders or folks from third parties or whatever, it's getting that collaboration and working together, because at the end of the day, the purpose, what we can see and understand from NPM is how do we efficiently get, the money to the people who need it the most in the most, productive and, efficient way. And I think from our perspective, when anyone's engaging in any of these projects, it's what are these guiding principles all the way along the path that you can keep coming back to and go, does that actually move the needle? Is that actually part of the the key objectives we have outlined in the beginning? So
Toby, just in relation to that, I was just going to add comments to the comments that Richard made. We have obviously, as Richard said, very strong relationships with the digital team at the NDIA, but more broadly than that, it has been about really establishing solid relationships at all levels of the NDIA, from both a sort of business to business, but also, sort of technology to technology team as well. And I think that's really critical because it's making sure that what we're doing as an organisation is also aligned to the goals and objectives of what the NDIA is trying to achieve for, ultimately the participants of the NDIA, of which obviously a number are our clients. So, understanding what their corporate plan is and their goals and how what we do can contribute to that, is absolutely critical and has been critical to the success that we've had so far. It's always challenging. And once again, it's not necessarily, sort of a one-way path. You've got to, sort of be able to adapt and, change as that's required. And it, takes a lot of investment, and some of it's investment in time, and some of it's very frustrating along the way as well. But, we've tried to make sure that we keep top of mind ultimately that we're both trying to work for the better experience of clients and, people living with disability ultimately in Australia. So, for us, that's working well, but we have to actively work at it.
Yeah. So looking to the future of, I guess I get some view from all of you guys on what's next, right? Are there more candidates that you guys are looking to investigate in and unearth? Jane, from your perspective, the industry as a whole, how do you see this sort of progressing? For instance, say with NPM, or more broadly, folks adopting this sort of technology to do a better job of what they're doing. What does the future hold, do you think?
Thanks, Toby. Look, for us, I would say we're already, very innovative in our use of technology, as this example, sort of really shows. But it's more of the same. This is a sector that is crying out for innovation and for use of technology to drive a better experience for clients. And it's also a better experience for others who are involved in that ecosystem. So, another really important stakeholder for us are providers, which we share mutual clients with. And whatever we can do to make that, a much more efficient and, frankly, seamless experience is absolutely critical to the success, not only of us as a company, but to the sector as a whole, and to achieving, what is our vision and certainly, I think the vision more broadly of what we're trying to achieve. So, working closely with the NDIS and the NDIA, as they continue down the path of their digital transformation, and us, working hand in hand with them to ensure that we're able to, join them in that journey. But also, we at some stages will be further ahead, and may need to wait for the NDIA to catch up on some of those areas, because as everyone would understand, as a government agency, they're reliant on others for a lot of their technology advancement as well. And so for us, it's then working out how do we work hand in hand, but don't let that necessarily hold us back. So, Richard, I'm sure will have some more to add, but for me, it's more of the same, and keeping that laser-like focus on the client experience and what is going to deliver the best improvement in service provision, and along the way, make our employees' jobs much more meaningful as well.
Fantastic. Richard, did you want to add to that? It's a pretty awesome answer if you ask me.
Yeah, James, I mean, it just emphasises in my role, the need to be absolutely hand in glove with the business and how it ends. I'm blessed to be sort of working in the business where with a peer group, a boss, and a board who just absolutely value the use of technology and actively invest in it as well. But our business is, in terms of where we go and what's next, is that client experience is critical. Now, disability is a big tent. It includes physical disabilities, vision impaired, hearing, intellectual disabilities, people who've acquired their disability in life or they were born with them. So from a client experience perspective and dealing with their entire community, it creates some unique challenges for us in terms of how we deliver that customer experience against such a broad group of clients. And that's how you use technology to assist you with that, whether it be UiPath or AI or machine learning is really, I guess, the exciting bit, but the challenge as well. And sort of being close to the business goals is really sort of what I aim to do to try and work out where we go to next.
Unique you guys have. I mean, actually, it's out there, but your working relationship, between the CTO and the CEO, is pretty good. Any sort of thoughts on the secret to the success there?
Yeah, thanks, Toby. I mean, Richard and I, absolutely, we have a really strong working relationship. And I recruited Richard into the business, with the board. And we were really clear on what our organisational objectives were and what we needed in a technology partner and obviously chief technology officer coming into the business. And so, for me and Richard, it's about being, in line and aligned with what our business objectives are. And so that clarity has always existed, but then having really, open, frank conversations and, so there's no secrets, no one's left wondering. We've been absolutely, sort of arm in arm in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And, for me, it's been fabulous to have someone of Richard's caliber in our business and to see him build the technology team, in the same way. So, we're very fortunate to have Richard and his team on board and, they're embedded in the business. Such that, not only Richard and the team, but, myself, we understand the processes that our staff members are following. And so getting that insight and knowledge, I think, has also been really critical in us being able to make a difference in the processes. So I'll be quiet, Richard, and let you talk.
No, thank you. It's true. I think, if you look at any industry that's transformed, retail or entertainment, Amazon, Netflix, or technology has been at the heart of those transformations, and this business is no different. So therefore, it's important to have a seat at the table, and I've absolutely got that. And Jane sort of make sure we're front and centre and we have that voice. But at the same time, you've got to earn the right, and to do that, you've got to be absolutely passionate about the business you're in. So when I joined, I spent time listening to customer calls. As Jane said, I processed invoice. I had coffee catch-ups with other leaders in the business and so on. And that allowed me to pick up sort of what those common themes were and actually start talking in the language of the business as well. And, I worked with Jane on a 30, 60-day, 90-day plan to really sort of say, well, can we jointly agree what the goals of technology should be and how they line up to the strategy? And that was something written down that, I could be held accountable to by both Jane and the board. And it works very well. From a team perspective, that message about, whether you're a Salesforce person, you're a PHP developer, you're a BI, that's great. But in this business, you've really got to be connected with the purpose, and you've got to understand what's important for both our clients and the staff who are supporting them day to day. So, I spend a lot of time with my team just really emphasising that and sort of saying we've got to be a true business partner in order to be successful. You're on mute, Toby.
There was drilling upstairs.
Yeah, we nearly got through one meeting without someone saying you're on mute.
No, but it's it's kind of it's simple but can be complex. But I've seen any successful project is collaboration and empathy and working shoulder to shoulder. And like you say, Richie, you just don't get that overnight. You got to be passionate. There's trust and all the rest of it that's built in. But it looks like you guys have got a great working relationship, which is awesome, because you guys are achieving incredible stuff at NPM. I think we're going to jump into Q&A time. We've got 12 minutes to go. Time flies when you're having fun. Now, yeah, I'm just looking at the Q&A panel. So if folks on this webinar, if they want to just pop a question into the Q&A panel, there's some come through on chat, really listening to me, but that's okay. So one of the questions was, Michael, have you read all those books behind you? No, actually, I made that one up. How was your experience working with Cloudwerx? Anybody want to take that? Be gentle.
Yeah, God, I'll take that. So Toby and I go back a little while, so we'd work together. But it was a happy coincidence that when I joined Cloudwerx, we're already working with My Plan Manager. I speak maybe a bit more broadly about partnership, right? And getting the right size. So, I've spent the last 10, 12 years or so in my career in organisations of a similar size. In terms of 300 to 1,000 staff, very nimble, very customer focused, rather than the sort of, and to work in those environments, you've got to find technology partners who can work within that culture as well. And I guess going to some of the larger, more widely known hasn't really worked in other of my roles. And I think what Cloudwerx have brought for us is that they're the right size for us. We can get the A team, we can get flexibility in terms of approach and have open discussions, and frankly flexibility from a commercial perspective as well when you need to find a different way. And that's not always the experience if you go with some of the Big Four or some of the larger system integrators. So whoever I'm working with, that's always very important to me now. But on a day-to-day basis, Cloudwerx are embedded in the team. We're working on a large transformation now in another area. And it is truly a blended team where we have a mixture of internal My Plan Manager technology resources, business resources who've been seconded to the project, and full-time Cloudwerx architects and tech leads who are working with us. So, we obviously, like any relationship, we have our speed bumps, and things don't always go right. But in terms of an open relationship and a commitment to resolve that for us, Toby's always been excellent at doing the right thing by us.
It's not about me. It's my people.
I think, Toby, the other thing that I would add to Richard's comments is that, in my experience, since engaging you, it's been great to see how our cultures and the values of our organisations have been really strongly aligned. And, for me, I think that's also part of the success, as well as the fact that, you've got a line to me, I've got a line to you. We can easily pick up the phone and have a conversation, no matter what time of day or night, as well as I could with members of the team. Yeah, that sort of relationship has been really important, but also the aligned culture and values.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Michael, a question for you. What advice would you give to businesses who haven't started with RPA and not sure if it's for them or not? Is he me?
Yeah, sorry, absolutely. So I think there's a big thing, we like to say, a bit of a cheesy term, but the art of the possible. And I think a lot of this comes from the first step is to sort of understand what it can do and then how it applies to your business. And it's not immediately obvious to many organizations starting out. As you would say, I understand what a Salesforce does. I understand what an ERP system does. I've zero MYOB. I get it. That makes sense. It's a specific platform for a specific problem. I think the awareness opportunity for UiPath is that it can address any business pillar, any problem you have, because it's not a point solution. It is a augmented capability into your workforce that enables you to go about processing anything and work with any of your other systems, not instead of. So I think it's a different mindset of approaching the technology, and absolutely, I'm sure after this session, if there's any follow-ups or that wanted to have some one-on-one sessions, Toby and his team would absolutely be happy to sort of have those initial sort of exploratory discussions. And I think to me, it starts with, if you have a problem, bring that to a table of an initial RPA solution. And I think you would be pleasantly surprised to understand that, RPA can play a powerful role across many pillars of the business. And I may segue that into answering another question, if I might, Toby, and that was another question in the chat around seeing some concrete examples of processes that have been automated. And if I can, I'll just share my screen very quickly to give a bit of a UiPath inside of you, and hopefully everyone can see this. But we have, on our little internal Google that we have at UiPath, if I type in use case, I'm going to get thousands of hits of successful automations that have been put into production. And again, all of this is accessible through Toby and his team. But what we have to provide to make this discussion simple is if we were starting in finance or accounting or in human resources or IT or legal or contact center or healthcare or whatever, we already have mapped out examples across all of our customers' successful deployments. What are the areas of HR, hire to manage, recruitment and onboarding, from highest automation potential to the lowest, unattended through to attended automation, and we have a lot. We have a lot of this. So where I was answering the previous question, it's about where do you want to look, and then we can absolutely come to the table and assist with those discussions of, we can give you samples of here's what other customers are looking at. Let's talk about what that looks like in your business, and then we may find some alignments and some opportunities there. So believe me when I say we have lots of this on hand. It's about where's the business opportunity for you, and then we can surround that with what does the opportunity look like, I think is probably how I would answer that.
You almost went to a spoiler alert there of what we're offering participants on this webinar, which I'll get to in a sec. So stay on to hear about that one. Now, I've got a question here. Have you reached your project ROI? Ideally, RPA projects takes over a year to get money back, but are you close? Getting there?
Without doing the sums in terms of how much we paid you guys and licensing and that, I don't know the number off the top of my head. But to give you a flavour, on a daily basis, we are freeing up the time of 8 staff to do other things. Within an operational team. So who previously would have been doing this process manually on a day-to-day basis. So when you extrapolate that out to, in terms of dollars over time that can be redeployed elsewhere in the organisation, I think we're there, if not very soon, and it's, I think, the ROI, it's from our perspective is a bit, we have new things that we want to do, which we weren't able to provide from a capacity perspective. So by freeing up that time for people within the contact center to work that way, we're able to establish and think about new services and new things we can offer our clients as part of that plan management offering.
Yeah, we've definitely, Richard, you're absolutely right. We have definitely reached our, and in fact, probably exceeded what we thought in terms of ROI. So, I'm very comfortable with the selection of our first choice. Now it's on to the next.
It was an obvious target, the first one. So we were lucky. You're back, Toby.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, people. And I think we got another question that what would you have done differently if you were to do this project again?
Started sooner. No, in all seriousness, that pivot, to the experimentation approach, I think we could have probably leaned into that decision a bit sooner, as opposed to taking a more traditional sort of sprint-based agile sort of development, approach to the project, I think. But I think other than that, despite the fact we've done all the process mapping, and when you get into it, and you start lifting up rocks and go, I didn't know about what was under here. So I don't know whether we could have identified that any sooner. It's the nature of the project. But yeah, I think that would be it for me. If we did it again, we'd certainly do it. We'd do it differently in that when we go about the next process.
Toby's frozen again.
Apologies, people. Apologies.
You're back.
Any final thoughts, Jane, on sort of like the key sort of takeaways for folks on this webinar?
Oh, wow. I think I would say that it's important to go into it with eyes wide open and understand that, the first time you implement robotic processing automation, it's going to have some bumps in the road, as Richard has said. But I think you can really limit those by making sure that you do the work that we did up front, which was around the blueprinting. So mapping out your processes and really understanding the various steps in the processes, and therefore, sort of where the high repetition, high volume activities are that, can have a rules base applied to them. To make sure that you're picking those right candidates up front. To me, that's the critical preparatory work that I think makes the difference in being successful.
Fantastic. Michael, any final thoughts you've got there for our audience? We've got a minute to go. I've got a little bit of a sweetener at the end, and then we can wind up the webinar.
Yeah. Look, I'll try and take only 5 seconds and leave you the remaining 55. My final thought would be, obviously, I'm after this call, I'm here to support Toby and his team and Toby directly, which I'm going to do. This is your segue, Toby, into what you have to close out with. But there's a couple of questions that have just come through as well, which unfortunately we're not going to have time to answer, but absolutely follow up after the fact, and we'll be able to close out on this.
Fantastic. So, for all folks who have joined today, I keep saying folks, but hang on, that's what happens. We are offering a free RPA deep dive and discovery session. So where we kind of look at solution design and ROI analysis using Automation Hub, which will, essentially get to the heart of some of these candidates for automation. So we will be in contact with you, or reach out to us, we'll be in contact with you. But again, guys, thanks so much for freeing up some of your calendar to join me today to discuss your world's RPA and the industry itself. Really enjoyed the chat, and thanks very much again.
Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everyone.